Greetings and welcome to today's C# coding session thingy. Last time we were messing with the custom chat color stuff and managed to get the font rendering working, added in a quick display of the 16 colors available. And today we are going to see if we can finish up this customization dialog, just to see if we can add in some quick selection, quick coding options, custom buttons for the different text formatting and such. But I figured I'd just start up by showcasing what we actually did get working last time, and this is pretty much it. Though I have discovered one minor problem with some of the color handling code, because for some reason the light gray color doesn't seem to be working anymore. So there's something wrong in the color selection or color handling class, which doesn't quite catch the light gray selection. So I'll have to start by tracking down that bug and see if we can fix it. Besides that, the rest of it seems to be working the way it's supposed to. So, of course, if I select 0, it'll be black, so won't be visible. Dark blue, bright blue, the dark green, the bright green, the aqua, the bright aqua, the red, and the bright red, the purple, and the bright purple, the gold, and the yellow. The dark gray does seem to be working, and white of course works because that's basically the default color. But for some reason the light gray is not working, so let's see if we can figure out exactly what's up with that, which should be in here somewhere. Let's see, is it supposed to be gray or gray with an A or with an E? That I cannot remember. Let's see. That's why. See, here we have a double instance of gray, which is exactly why it's not working. That one's fine. And this one is fine, so let's see if it's working now. You can do any number of ampersands in there and it will not encode them. It will only encode them if one of the valid letters or characters are following the ampersand or the section symbol. Both are acceptable, so let's see if we can do server as see, and S is not a valid control tag, so the ampersand is not encoded, and thus just put in the text. But if I add in the 7, it's encoded and thus removed. Yes, I did indeed. And that's one of the typical mistakes that people make when they construct tag encoding like this. They don't always think of exactly that situation. So hence why I put some thought into actually trying to highlight that particular issue. We can do these and it'll count them up exactly. We can do these, they will add them, though at the moment we don't have a how should I put this, properly qualified ASCII conversion. which means at the moment the section symbol will simply be converted into a question mark because the .NET text encoder doesn't know which ASCII code page to encode into, and as far as I know, there are no ways of telling it which code page to select when doing the ASCII encoding. So any kind of special characters, basically any character above 127 becomes a question mark, unless it can be remapped to either a letter, a symbol, or a number. But just to showcase again, we can do the section symbol here, and we can do an and reset there, and it still works because the encoder or parser code accepts both of them. Okay, so we got that bug fixed. That was pretty easy. Let's see if it works here. The 7 there. We'll do the green there. Green. There we go. Nice. We'll see if we can do an underline, if I can remember which one it is. There we go. So the underline is working fine. It does also render the shadows if they are enabled. So it can handle those as well. But at the moment it does not handle a new line setup, so that's something we need to add as well at some point. But for starters, I think I will get to work on doing some better custom UI color selection button thingamajigs, so we can get these colors to become clickable. If we, for example, highlight a word in here and then click a color, say the bright aqua, for example. If I click that, then I want it to basically add that in like this and keep the selection. And the same goes for things like bold, underline, strike through. Let's see if I can remember the strike through. I think it's M. Yep, there it is. And then we can do a reset here to get it back. Nice. Okay, so let's see if we can get that UI stuff built. Okay, so in order for those to become clickable objects, we kind of need to hook some mouse events and do some interaction there for the sake of making things a little easier in terms of detecting them. I'll probably make use of an array of rectangles and have them serve as hitboxes. So we can just loop through them and detect whether the mouse pointer is inside one of those rectangles, and depending which one, that will then translate into which specific color index we've selected. So we are in the paint event of the form itself, which takes care of first rendering the black background, and then doing all the color stuff, and finally, as the last bit of it, we basically use our custom font rendering class to draw a bitmap on top of the form using whatever text was put in there, and it internally handles all the encoding and what's it called, bitmap font rendering stuff. So All of that stuff is contained within our custom Minecraft font class. Uh, it's 31 degrees C in my apartment and I'm still drinking hot coffee. Nice. Okay, this loop right here handles the current rendering setup for the 16 Minecraft colors. And since these basically generate the rectangles that we are going to need for the mouse hitbox stuff, we may want to reconsider how this entire setup is done. On top of that, I would also like to see about doing something different with the numbers and letters, primarily because, for example, the dark green and the dark aqua, along with the bright red, bright purple, those are pretty difficult to see because of the color inversion. So I'm going to see about setting those up a little bit differently, so they become more visible. So let's see if we can do something about that. This will be a lot of custom graphics drawing to get all this working properly and looking good. So we will definitely have to, yeah, we'll kill the color inversion, and then actually let's see if we can perhaps try and do some text rendering, but with an outline maybe. Yeah, we might do that. Let's see. How big are these exactly? They are set as the height of the text box. So what if we do those a little bigger maybe? Excuse me. Okay. We'll have to rearrange those squares a bit and get rid of this stuff. So this would be the color chars. Yeah, we'll rebuild this completely. All right, so finally render the custom font text. There we go. Actually, why don't we put this down here? Render a black background to contain the custom text stuff. And here render the 16 Minecraft chat colors for button selection something. All right. So we know that the dialog in its current form is basically a fixed. Visual Studio got updated the other day, and since then I have had some severe difficulties getting the properties pane working. Sometimes it just stays empty and doesn't populate at all. So weird. So basically the form has a fixed border. There's no minimize or maximize on it, so we basically know that the dialog itself will never change dimensions. So as part of the um, uh, load event, I guess, we could easily put in something that, let's see if we can find it. There it is. Okay. Um, so here we could potentially put up the 16 color rectangles pre-configured to whatever size we decide to make them, and then have them work as both the drawing elements but also as the hitboxes. So let's see if we can get that set up somehow. So for that we are going to need a bunch of rectangles. We'll call them color hitboxes, and just do an empty array to begin with, and then as part of the load event we'll initialize these and pre-configure them in their correct positions, as well as whatever size we determine they should be. So initialize. Nah, actually, why don't we just call this build color hitboxes? Yeah, that'll work. Since we are actually constructing them, and we're constructing them based on the size of the text box. So 16 colors, and basically we will end up having either 16 colors in one row, or say divide them in the middle, like we had them before. I think that would be the better option. And actually, why don't we just, yeah, let's do that. We'll do a setup similar to what we had before, except we'll move it up a little bit further, and then basically just render the code for each of them above and below the actual color squares. So we'll do some box spacing. Set that at, I don't know, 5 pixels maybe. We'll definitely need to loop through here like so, and then we should probably figure out exactly how wide they should be. Yeah, let's box width equals, let's see, we've got the text box which has a set width that currently follows whatever size the window is. So if we do something like, say, the width of this one minus, and then we need to count the spacing between, and since we need 8 boxes, that means we need 7 spaces. So that would be 7 times the box spacing, and then this would be divided by 8, and that should yield us the correct width for these. Here we need to recreate these, so that would be 16, and then we can set them. Alright, so let's see. Color hitbox, this would be for the first line for the low intensity colors. So that would be for I, and here we need to construct a new rectangle, sorry, for this particular hitbox. So the X position would then be the left of the text box, which is over here. That would be the start position, plus, and this would then be, let's see, I times, that would be the box width plus the box spacing. There we go. And then the top would be, I don't know, we'll see. Let's just do this. That would then be the top of the text box minus whatever box height will do. Yeah, I guess the text box height would be fine. And this would then be, let's see, what if we do the button height, yeah. Let's see, button height, so let's grab the accept. We need this twice because I'm gonna do one line, the height of a button for the numbers, the hex numbers for each color. So one at the top, followed by a line of colors, followed by another line of colors, followed by the bottom part of them, so two of these. And then we need the box height times 2, and we're gonna need some box spacing. So here we need, let's see, 1, 2, 3, we've got 4 lines, so we need 3 times the box spacing. There we go. And then we'll add a little more for measure. So let's add another 10 pixels. That should be fine. Alright, so the Y position would then be actually, why don't we just rename this to Y? There we go. That will be the Y position for this one. And we need to specify the width of it, which would be this one, and then the height, which would be this one. So that takes care of the first color row, and actually, come to think of it, we only need one button height. So we'll just do this instead, and then we basically only need 2 of these, because we'll render the text stuff offset compared to whichever color hitbox we're referencing. Okay, so for the next one, color hitboxes, that would then be I plus 8, which is the second line, and then we'll basically follow the same principles, except the Y position has to be updated. So we'll grab a copy of this. There we go. And this would then be 1 box height plus box spacing to correctly move it down, and otherwise it's pretty much the same thing. So we should be good. Okay, So this method we will call during the load event. Since that's past the initialization for the class constructor stuff, we should be fairly safe to um, um, set those up here, because at this time all of the remaining controls on the form have already been created, added to it, and initialized, so we should be good. Okay, so that should take care of constructing these. And then in the rendering stuff here, we will simply do a check on the color hitboxes to determine whether the array has been initialized. Since we're constructing it as an empty array, we can simply check the length, and if it's greater than 0, then we know that they are correctly initialized, and we should be fine to try and render stuff with them. If we attempt to render using something that has not yet been initialized, will cause a pretty severe exception. So don't want to do that. So here we'll simply check if the length of this array is greater than 0, and if it is, then we shall go through and see if we can render these boxes. Okay, so rendering these would be fairly simple since they've already been placed. We can basically just draw them. So let's do that. We'll do a fill rectangle. This would be a new solid brush, not a split container. Downside of offsetting your fingers by 1, I guess. And here we need to fetch the actual color object, and luckily we do have an index reference, though we do need to put this inside a for loop. So we'll do this less than the length of the color hitbox array, because that then determines how many times we need to loop through it. And for each of these, we'll do some additional checks to work out where we need to put the actual text for them. Color hitboxes would be the rectangle that we need, so we should be good. And this should then re-enable the colored boxes. Let's have a quick look. Oh yeah, very nice. Next part of this would then of course be to put the code references on there, and for that I'm going to use the font from the text box, because that has already been pre-configured to a bigger size, and then I'll do the codes in a bright white color so we can see them more clearly. Alright, so in order to get the text for that rendered properly, I'm going to make use of another set of rectangles, and then do a string format to basically center the text within each rectangle. And to place them correctly, we need to check how far along the count we are to work out whether we have to put them above or below the current rectangle. So to work that out, we'll simply do a check to see if C is greater than, actually if it's less than 8, then we need to put them above. Render the text above the current rectangle, and otherwise we need to render it below. Text below the current rectangle. I can't even pronounce that. Whoops. There we go. There we go. Nice. All right. So let's see. Uh, right. So here we actually kind of need the chars that we need to render. So we'll do a string color codes and put them in here, which would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F. There we go. We had something similar before, but we'll do it this way so we can make use of the existing rectangles for mouse detection. Okay, so for all of the rectangles from and including 0 to and including 7, we need to render the text above the current rectangle. And we already determined that we would use the standard button height as the actually that's probably not going to work. Nah, we'll use the height of the hitboxes. That should be fine. Okay, so we'll need the graphics object and then do a drawstring. And the drawstring takes quite a few different arguments depending how we want to set it up. For our purposes, we are going to make use of basically this one, except it accepts a regular rectangle. Welcome to the channel. It's blue on black background, so I'm having a really hard time seeing your name, but I think it says the robot trick. The best way to learn the basics of C#. Well, I would say that it kind of depends whether you have any previous programming experience or not. The best way, the easiest way, I guess, would be to Google C# beginner tutorial, or do the same search on YouTube, for example. That should yield you a couple of million suggestions on how to get started. Other than that, the second suggestion would be go find someone that's willing to teach you. Getting into it is not really all that difficult as long as you and there's another suggestion. As long as you are willing to learn, how should I put this, the raw logic of C#. It's not all that difficult. If you've looked at JavaScript, for example, C# is not that far from JavaScript. It's basically the same syntax for most of the different things. So there are plenty of resources online everywhere to get started. The core basics, you're actually watching them right now. The core basics are things like doing a for loop, which is pretty much identical to how it works in Java or JavaScript or C, C++, completely the same thing. The next thing you need to look into as the core basics is an if statement. The expanded version of an if statement comes with something like if C is less than 8 and C is not equal to -1, which would be an AND check, or the same thing for an OR. You do the double vertical bars, the pipe symbol actually. That would be, these are the very basics of them. Following this is digging into the different kind of variables, and then from there start putting things together. the number one thing is not to let yourself get kicked down by failures and mistakes. The best way to learn programming, regardless what language it is basically learning by doing, and that will inevitably produce a lot of failures. But any failure that you experience is gained experience of how not to do stuff. So you should definitely try to view your failures as experience gained rather than waste of time or a negative thing. In programming, any kind of failure is a positive thing because it teaches you how to not accomplish this particular goal. And if you have sufficient curiosity to try and dig into the problem at hand and figuring out how to solve the problem or the puzzle, then you're definitely on the right path to becoming a good developer. I have been considering doing maybe a couple of sessions where I go through the very basics of C#, if it's something that you would like to see. Then I'll queue it up and do some sessions there. At the moment, I'm just trying to get basically this particular project finished, I guess. And after that, I'm still kind of open to what the next project should be. And I'm definitely looking for feedback, so don't be shy. Feel free to use the chat. As soon as I am able time-wise to finish my Media Hub, I'm gonna post a link to my future Media Hub site on my Twitch page, and through the Media Hub, anyone will be able to basically sign up and put suggestions in a suggestion box, both for future projects and for current running projects. I'll do complete link ups to all of the video segments I've done of all my streams, and link up for my GitHub repositories. I've already linked those on the Twitch page, but the general idea of the Media Hub page is to basically give me a centralized area to keep track of all this stuff and further link on. And I'll also put up a kind of a project management system that I'll leave public. So we can keep track of how far along the project we are. If somebody comes up with suggestions for features for one of the projects, we can put those up. If somebody finds an issue with some of the code, we can either use the issue tracker on GitHub or the one I'm building on the Media Hub page, so we can keep track of it. But definitely, I'm always open to suggestions, requests. I do those as well, so don't hold back. Anyways, we were about to try and draw some text on the form itself. Basically, it looks like this, and when we're executing all this stuff, we get all the cool extra graphics on here. Drawstring unfortunately doesn't accept a char as its input, so we may have to convert that. But the first argument would be the text that we want to draw. Here we will have to specify this and then turn it into a string. And then it wants some kind of font reference. For this, we are going to use the one from the text box, so we'll use that one. And for the brush, we will force a white, and as luck would have it, we have an excellent collection of all the different colors that come with the .NET package, and we'll grab the white. And here we kind of need to go through these and find the right one. This would be the one that we want. And the reason we want this one is so we can specify the size that we want the text to be drawn within by means of a rectangle, and then we'll use string format to force it to be centered within that rectangle. So for this we are going to need a new rectangle. There we go. Rectangle takes an X position, a Y position, a width and a height. The width and height we already know because the color hitbox tells us the size. The same goes for the X and the Y position, except we need to offset the Y position a bit. So we'll simply just grab the current X position of the current hitbox. We'll do the same for the Y position, except here we need to offset it by the height of the hitbox, so we can move it up. And then we'll simply specify the hitboxes, the width of it, and the height of it. There we go. And then finally, to get this aligned correctly, we need to create a new string format. This is the way that you can align text that you are drawing onto, say, a bitmap or a form. The string format object contains that kind of alignment stuff. To align it, let's see, this would be the horizontal alignment. We simply specify that we want it centered. And for the vertical alignment, the height-wise alignment, we'll use the line alignment and specify center. Unfortunately not. And drawstring has a further deficiency which deals with anti-alias. If you are drawing a anti-aliased text onto a transparent background, none of the shaded pixels will be drawn. So you kind of need to draw diffuse text onto some kind of solid surface. So that's something that you definitely need to keep in mind when messing with it. Part of what I have done here is that I have basically put all of the different parts into a single line statement. I've broken it up so we can see all the individual parts, but basically this is a one-line statement. I could have created a separate brush, created a separate font, created a separate rectangle, and created a separate string format. I chose to put them into a single line setup instead, and then just break it down so we can see it. That way we don't have to mess with additional variables. Now for the one that needs to draw the text below the current rectangle, we basically need to do the exact same thing, except we need to add the height of the checkbox to the Y position, sorry, the hitbox to the Y position instead of subtract it. So we'll fetch a copy of this, stuff it down here, and change this to a plus. There we go. And this should take care of rendering 0 to F above and below the current color boxes. Let's see what it looks like. Nice. See, that's a lot more readable than the previous setup was. Okay, cool. So next part would be to see if we can get some mouse hitbox stuff working. So let's see if we can get that working somehow. to do that, we need to hook a couple of mouse events. And then basically, let's see, this would be the rendering stuff. So let's put the mouse handling down here. Mouse handling. And for the mouse handling stuff, I'm going to grab a couple of events. One of them for actually, yeah, we'll do one for the button check and one for movement. So to do that, we'll grab, we'll override the on mouse down. This event deals with mouse buttons being clicked or pressed, as in when you press the button down. There's a similar one for when the button is released called mouse up. This we will need to basically work out whether one of the hitboxes has been both hit and clicked at the same time. And in doing so, we'll add in the appropriate code, color code for it. Another one that we will need to override would be the mouse move. This one basically triggers whenever the mouse moves across the form, whether a button is pressed or not, makes no difference, the event will still trigger. So basically this lets us implement custom drawing code or custom drag and drop options if we don't want to use the built-in Windows stuff. So we can do a lot of cool stuff with the mouse move event. To begin with, though, we'll see if we can detect when one of the let's get this put into, yeah, I know, Joban, you don't like it. Sorry, mate. But it does make it a little easier to get rid of the code that we don't exactly have to look at the moment while doing this stuff. So there we go, all collapsed. Now we can see what we're doing. Okay, so in any case, whether the mouse button is being clicked or the mouse is being moved, we still need some way of detecting whether the mouse is currently within one of the 16 colored squares. So to do that, we'll simply do another helper method up here called getHitIndex, and what this will do is basically loop through the color hitboxes one at a time and verify whether the current mouse X and Y position are within the hitboxes. If it is, then it'll return the current index number, and otherwise we'll have it return -1 to indicate that no box is being hit. So we'll do an integer return, and then we will of course have to pass the mouse X position as well as the mouse Y position. Should be fairly straightforward. Then we will loop through the color hitboxes, and if they have not yet been initialized, then this will basically just end up returning -1 because the loop will never go through the first checks. So also fairly straightforward. Here we will do a simple check. Now here we know that the mouse X position needs to be within the width of the rectangle starting at the X position. So I'll do a quick check. If mouse x is greater than or equal to the current hitbox x position, and mouse x is less than, and the reason I'm doing less than, I'll get to that in a minute. Color hitboxes dot x plus the width. When you grab the x position and add the width to it, the width will always be 1 based, whereas the x position is 0 based. So when you add those two together, you would basically get a size that's 1 pixel too big. So when doing the check, you simply just do less than instead of less than and equals. Because if you do less than and equals, it will still count as a hit when you have the mouse pointer at the pixel to the very right of the rectangle itself. Okay, so this is basically for the x position. We need to do pretty much the same thing for the y position, except we're using the height. So grab this and simply just change the y, x to y, 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 and height. There we go. So if the current mouse X and mouse Y positions are within where this particular rectangle is, then this counts as a hit. So we will simply return the current counter. Job done. Alright, now that we have a hit option, we can do a temporary setup here. See? Yes. That method basically does exactly the same thing. The reason I chose to go through and build it up is because I see more and more that people become highly dependent on such methods and basically forget how to do this stuff manually. And when it comes to converting from one language to another, or simply learning what the code actually does to try and figure out how to do things like this, a method like that doesn't exactly always explain it, exactly how the code is supposed to be written. So effectively, Jobon's excellent library reference does the exact same thing. There's no difference. And in any other situation where I would be developing something else, I would most likely use contains. Simply because it's quicker and easier, but to anyone learning, it doesn't explain how to actually implement such code. It just explains how to make use of a library. I'm kind of the opinion that if we end up granting Microsoft too much power in terms of what kind of code they control, and thereby allow us to use, we could end up in a situation where Microsoft completely removes any kind of power and freedom for us to do what we need to do in their language. So that's kind of also why I'm at times trying to teach how to actually do these things without the use of a library. One of the major issues I see when somebody distributes either a VB.NET or C# based product, you have to yes, naming conventions and such does tell us exactly what it does, but both you and I know that the contains method actually does this particular if check. But if you grab somebody that is just starting on, say, C#, for example, and doesn't have a clue how programming languages work behind the scenes, then this particular person will probably not know exactly how that method achieves the goal of figuring out whether this particular point is within that rectangle. So this is how it's done. There's no difference between the two, but this is to showcase exactly how to achieve that method, the same result. And yes, I know that you and I can argue this for hours on end, but one of the major reasons I'm doing things manually on stream, it actually stems from someone I've been tutoring, who was asking me what actually goes on behind the scenes on all the different library methods that he was using and making heavy use of. And that basically started me explaining to him how to do things old school. And by doing that, I managed to get him mystified about how to accomplish those tasks without libraries. Um, uh, just to get back to what I was trying to convey as well, often when I go to download a product somewhere, I end up with some package that contains 50 DLLs, dynamic linked libraries, that need to be in the same folder with some .NET developed application. And that just tells me that that particular developer was heavily relying on a bunch of third-party libraries to accomplish whatever task he needed to accomplish. Typically, when you get a product from me, you will basically just get the executable. That's it. And the major reason for that is as much as I'm able to, I try to avoid becoming dependent on a ton of third-party libraries to accomplish something. One of the typical things I see is a Java developer moving over to C# and making heavy use of the much hated JSON format for things like configuration files and whatnot. And the first thing the dude does is to go out and find a third-party JSON library that can handle the JSON text for him. And in my opinion, that is about the worst thing that you can possibly do. JSON belongs to Java, and it should stay with Java. It doesn't belong anywhere else. And regardless how you choose to look at things, when you need to make use of some extra, yes, exactly. Node.js is yet another example of a horrible system that people really should stay far, far away from. It's by far the worst kind of script sandbox ever created. And yeah, I don't even want to go there. Yuck. Anyway, enough nightmares. I do enjoy your pings, Joban. Please don't misunderstand me at all. I enjoy the fact that you ping me with the different library usages for the same things that I'm doing old school. It's excellent having that kind of feedback. Hey there on Hellable. Welcome to the stream. So please, Joban, continue. By all means, continue. I enjoyed. Anyways, this tells us a hit index if one exists. Hey there, Ooze with Uzi. I hope you didn't bring your Nusi to the channel. That could get messy pretty quick. Okay, hitbox. Just to showcase this quick, we'll do a last hit index. Set that to -1. Um, okay, gotcha. Unenabled, yeah. Nice one. All right, so let's see if we can do a little bit of trickery here. Let's see if let's see if we can get a hit index. And as part of the event arguments, the X and Y positions exist right here. Here we'll do a quick check to see if we are hitting something. And if this hit that we just checked differs from the last hit index, then we'll do an update. And the way we do a quick update is that we start by setting the last hit index to the current hit index, and then we invalidate the current surface of the form, which forces a redraw of the entire form, basically triggering the onPaint event. And up here, we will do a quick check to see if we have a hit index that matches the color hitbox counter. If we do, then we will draw a rectangle around the current color box. So if C equals last hit index, then we will simply draw a rectangle, and for this we need a pen. We have the pens list, and for this we will use the, let's say, the cornflower blue, nice color. And here again we'll do the breakdown. Since I don't exactly want to draw this rectangle right on top of the current color rectangle, I'll create a new one with a little bit of spacing added to it. So I'll do another one, and this one we will offset by say x minus 2, and the y minus 2, and then we'll add a little bit too. Yes, it is a server launcher. If you hang on for just one more minute, I'll start it up and show it to you. Basically, this is a small server management launcher thingy with well, basically the goal is to end up having an application that is capable of starting up multiple Minecraft servers and monitoring them for players joining and leaving. There's a scheduling system built into it, so we can basically set up schedules for server restarts. There's a backup manager that lets us schedule backups, so we can shut down the server, basically zip the world folder. Hang on a second here, for example. This would be the world folder for the vanilla server. And everything that's in here will then basically be stuffed into a zip file, and then the server will be restarted afterwards. The reason I started this project is because I'm actually running two exactly. No need for plugins. I'm running a pure vanilla server for a couple of my Danish friends. It's completely off the books, private stuff. And I'm also running a 1.7.10 modded server with my own custom designed mod pack. So I'm running two different versions of Minecraft servers with two entirely different setups, but I needed a way to get them restarted once a day at least. For the modded server, I unfortunately have to restart it twice a day because of Thaumcraft. Thaumcraft has a very bad tendency of basically dwindling Minecraft down to blah. And that then requires a restart. So, and then of course the backup feature, because I keep forgetting making backups of the damn game servers. So whenever they crash and something goes wrong, horribly wrong, then yeah, you can probably imagine the mess that we can very quickly get into. So height, and we'll offset that by another 4 like this, and that should be it. All right. This should yield us enough to do some hitbox detection. Okay, so this is the main UI for the server launcher. As you can see, I've got two servers set up for it at the moment. Yeah, let's see. We'll fire one up. Start. And most of this stuff, there we go. Most of this stuff on the UI is all custom drawn stuff. As you can see, it's now indicating with the green arrow that it's up and running. When I get closer to finishing the project, I will basically uncomment the part that states the GUI for the Minecraft server should not be shown. As long as I'm still building the application and doing debugging, I'm leaving the Minecraft server UI on, so we can still access it in case some of the server launcher code crashes and I lose connection to the server. As you can see in the console, it starts up the remote console feature of the server itself, and you can also see that it accepted a connection from localhost, which is basically our server launcher here connecting to this Minecraft server, so we can issue commands to it. A ping graph for this particular setup would be kind of difficult to do because the ping is basically localhost. It's not connecting over the internet at all. Ping measuring wouldn't really be reliable. Okay. Basically, that's it. As you can see, we can shut it down here as well by hitting the stop button. Hey Sky. Sorry I wasn't around during the weekend. My family decided to show up, so yeah. If I hit the stop button on the launcher, it will, by means of remote console commands, tell the server to stop, which equals me going into the console here and typing stop, and it shuts down. Job done. And this is the one that we are currently working on. This dialog is for creating customized warning messages before a server shuts down, creating customized MOTD messages and stuffing those in the server properties before the server starts up. So when somebody attempts to connect to the server, they will get a customized, perhaps colored message of the day listed along with the server when it's online. But for now, let's see if the hitbox stuff actually worked the way it was supposed to. Well, I kind of got the size a little bit wrong, but other than that, we're getting the nice blue thingamajig around them. I'll probably have to make that white just to make it more visible. But let's see if we can find a good there. It's a little bit too big, so that's something that we need to fix. The source code for this entire project, apart from what's going on right now, is already on GitHub. The link is in one of the panels on the Twitch channel. And I do try to get the source code updated on GitHub the same day as I do the stream, unless I need to do some further documentation or some other stuff. In that case, I'll push the code the following day. In any case, the size was a little bit too big, so we'll decrease that a little bit and see if we got it right this time. Oh, right, I needed to change the color, so let's do a white here instead. There we go. Nice. Now we have a nice and neat hover effect for the colors to properly indicate to us which one we've got selected. Use of UI feedback and all that stuff. So the next part would then be to work out whether part of the text box has text selected. If it does, then handle inserting the color code at the beginning of the selection and then reselecting it. If nothing is selected, then try and figure out where the cursor is and see if we can insert the color code where the cursor is currently sitting. And that would be part of the click event. So let's have a look at that quick. That would be here. So mouse down. Of course, we could do the actual click event. Yeah, let's do the actual click event instead. Protected override void on mouse click. There we go. So the difference between mouse down and mouse click is that there is a preset definition of how much time elapses between mouse down and mouse up for it to be a proper click. And the same goes for a double click. The mouse down event triggers the exact instant the button is pressed and only triggers that once. So kind of depends what kind of functionality you need, which of the to determine which of the events you need to either override or hook. Okay, so if the button that was clicked was the left button and the last hit index is greater than -1, meaning we've clicked one of the actual colors, then this is where we need to handle inserting this particular color code. And the color code would then, of course, be one of the hex values for that matches the current hit index. So this will only occur if we are actually left-clicking on one of the colored squares. If we're left-clicking anywhere else on the form, this piece of code won't execute at all. Okay, so to do, figure out where to add insert edit the color code within the text box. That's basically the next task. Let's see if we actually have something available that can help us in accomplishing that particular task. There is there are a couple of different ways that we can basically get a little bit of information. Sometimes it's not accurate, unfortunately. Gets or sets the starting point of text selected in the text box. Selection length will typically have a value greater than 0 if at least one letter is selected within the text box, otherwise it'll be empty. For the most part, selection start should always contain the cursor position within the string. However, experience has shown that this is not always the case, unfortunately. So we'll have to go through and see how it actually ends up working out. Alright, so first of all we need to figure out whether this should be part of a selected text. If so, we might want to basically add a reset after the selection. If there hasn't already been added one. But in any case, we definitely need the selection start to figure out where we need to insert the code. Before we do that, though, we'll need to work out exactly which code to insert. We'll go up to the paint event, and then we will move this, because no point in declaring this twice when we can just reuse it by moving it up here and turning it private. There we go. And I'll do color codes like this, and then down here we will of course change the case, and also here. There we go. Now we can use that particular variable in both methods. Alright, so let's see. This would then be a control tag, which would become the ampersand, followed by the color codes of the selected by the last hit index. There we go. This will then end up becoming and0, and 1, and 2, and so on and so forth. And next part would then be to work out exactly where we need to place this particular code, and we need to work out whether we have to reset afterwards, or if we can just leave it as is. I can't remember whether this actually, no, it doesn't have an insert, so we'll have to do a little bit of string work. Alright. Let's see, string current text equals this one, and then we need to save the current position, which would be the selection start, and we'll need the selection length as well. Selection length, there we go, and then we'll take it from here. Okay, so if the selection length is 0, then we basically just need to insert the control tag pretty much where the selection position is. And if it's greater than 0, then actually we should probably do this. Part of the text is selected. So, and if it's not, then nothing is selected. Insert the control tag at the selection start position. Okay. Since we are adding or inserting some text, that also means that the selection start position will have to be moved accordingly, which means basically incrementing it by 2 since we're inserting 2 characters. So we'll see if we can get that done and get it working correctly. For this we need to do a let's see, the text property of this one would then be I'll split it up. First part would be grabbing the current text, starting at the first character, and then basically going to the start position. Let's see, do we need to add? Yeah, we need to add one to it, so that would be here. And the second part of it would then be at the start position to the length of this one minus the start position. That should be it. And then we'll add it in. So that basically comes to first part plus the control tag plus the second part. And then we need to set the, not that one, selection start to the start position plus 2 because control tag. And we should probably do this instead. There we go. Just in case we decide to make some kind of different change to this. And as far as I remember, the selection length needs to be set as well for this to work. We'll see. Let's see if this works. Let's put it here and put a blue in there. Nice. Except it's off by 1. So we'll need to fix that. And that would be because of this one. So let's see. Set it there. There we go. And we'll do restart in as yellow, 10 as red, and there we go. We now have mouse clickable color selection stuff. Nice. All right. The other part of this would then be if part of it is selected. If it is, then we basically need to cut out the selection and then work out whether the third part starts with a reset control tag reset control tag. If it starts with a reset, then we don't need to insert it. Otherwise, we do need to insert it. Let's see. Up here, we then need to again grab the first part, just like we did before. Actually, just grab it right there, and then we need to grab the selected part, which would be the current text at the start position and for selection length. That's it. And then the last part of it would then be the current text at the start position plus the selection length, and then that would then be the length of the text minus this the initial part of it, and that should take care of that part. And then we basically just go through the same kind of motion again, except this time we need to recalculate where to put the start position, because it has to be again correctly offset, and we also need to update the selection length, but basically it's the same thing as here. One final thing we need to work out is there a reset control tag in the last part? So if last part length greater than or equal to 2, then we need to check it. The reason it has to have a length of at least 2 characters is for a reset character to be valid. It needs the control character, which is either the ampersand or the section symbol, followed by an R, a lowercase r. So that has to be the case. Here we will simply do a quick check to see if the first 2 characters of last part, lowercase, forset lowercase, is either ampersand r or same thing, but use the section symbol r instead, because both are acceptable. And this of course has to be like so. So if either one of these 2 kinds of reset codes exist and we have a length greater than 2, then this indicates, yep, we have a reset control tag. Otherwise, we need to prefix last part with a reset, which would be and r, followed by last part. There we go. Nope, so prepend it. There we go. And then we can put it back in the text box, which would be the first part plus the control tag plus the selected part, followed by the last part. There we go. And then the selection start of the text box, selection start would be again the start position plus the length of the control tag. And here instead we need to set the selection length equal to the initial length that we got from the text box itself. There we go. And this should then make sure that we end up getting a reset tag appended to yes. There we go. Let's see if we can get this stuff functional. Boom. There we go. And let's do the 10 red. Boom. Sweet. Server, I want this one in blue, and then I want this one in that one, and this one in this one. There we go. Nice and ugly. Of course, this isn't particularly efficient in terms of setting up the codes, because all those resets can basically be ignored because of the way that the chat element handler in the game server itself deals with changes in those elements. So doing it the lazy way on keyboard will most likely be more efficient than actually using the mouse for this, but now we have the option to put it in there. There are a few more things that we kind of want to put in here, but at the moment don't have any kind of mouse interface for. Those options would be things like making text bold. If I can remember it, is it O? I can't remember. No, it's L. There we go. So now server is that one we don't need. This one needs to be a B. There we go. Nice. Well, that kind of depends on yeah, well, basically this setup is to let us see what the game's chat will look like before we actually start up the server. I have in the past run a few successful Minecraft communities, and one of the key time spenders in terms of running a community is all the time spent starting up the server, logging on with the client, checking that things look the way they're supposed to, disconnecting, shutting down the server, changing a configuration, starting up the server, and so on and so forth. And that is the #1 time waster for anything Minecraft related. Simply because for the most part plugins and all the other junk doesn't have a proper reload option. So the only way to get it properly reloaded is to shut it down and start it up again. And if you are doing modded communities and doing multiple modded servers at the same time, then yeah, you can spend an entire day just setting up new adverts in the chat across all the servers, simply because it takes so long to boot them up and shut them down again. Yes, we definitely need an undo, except I think I'll do a clear codes instead. That will go through the box in here and then basically remove all of these so we can strip them. For the most part, this is to assist us in setting these up without being forced to use the actual game itself. So whatever goes in this text box will effectively also end up in the configuration file for the Minecraft server launcher, and these will then be deciphered by the application and converted into proper JSON chat elements and sent to the server when it needs to post a message. For the MOTD, the control tag encoded text that comes out of this dialog will basically be converted into Unicode escape sequences followed by the color index as well as the formatting stuff. So that it fits with the format expected by the server as part of the MOTD property in the server properties file. Yes, a lot of it can be reduced, but I'm trying to keep it somewhat readable, so that how should I put this? Some with less experience have stand a better chance at following what's going on with the code, without me having to spend hours on end documenting everything by typing in lengthy descriptions as comments just to explain what's going on with the code. A lot of this can be reduced, yes. I'm not exactly doing this for efficiency and speed. I'm primarily doing this to try and teach um, what the code does and how things can be done, how some methods are done behind the scenes when you're using library calls and stuff. So um, anyways, we got the selection up. We've got the encoding stuff working. The only thing that's actually missing here are options to basically clear all the codes and some extra buttons to handle things like underline, bold, strike through, italic. We need to mess with the actual rendering routine to add in italic options. We need to get that done at some point. Let's see. If I remember right, I actually did put the icons in here. Just checking quick. No, I didn't. Okay. I did put the archiving and restarting in, but I didn't add the icons for, let's see, icons maybe? Nah. Here? Yep, here they are. Bold, italic, strike through, and underline. These are the ones that we need. And then of course we need a clear codes, but we'll see if we can do that as part of a button or something. So these we need to get over to our right here. Put them in here. There we go. Yeah, let's do character bold like that, and then character italic. At the moment, the custom rendering stuff does not include the italic setup. It's something that we need to get done. But it does do bold, it does strike through, and it does underline. And we'll call that underlined like the other ones. There we go. Alright, so we'll add these to the project and then do some extra custom buttons for these. So let's get those in here and see if we can. Projects, there we go. Resources, icons, get that one in there. And this one in here. And this one. And that one. And now that we are messing with this stuff, we might as well add the last two, archiving and the restarting. There we go. Now we've got all of them in here. So we can put them up. No, there is no translation for that one. Oh man. Why did you have to go and mention that? Now I want some. Dang it, Jobin. All right. So let's see. Bum, 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 bum. Yeah, we need to get that stuff set back as well. Let's see. The icons are 16 by 16. And if memory serves, a standard button is 23 pixels high. Yep, 23 pixels. So we should be fine in terms of adding a little bit extra spacing for them. So I'm kind of thinking if we do some basically same kind of setup as the color stuff, do some custom rectangles and these bitmaps, and then render something that looks like the buttons on the main window. We should be good to go. So for this, we already have the resource thingamajiggy. Are we using it though? I cannot remember. No, we just put it in here so we have it available. All right. Yeah, let's get some extra in here. We need 4 bold, underline, strike through, and italic. Yes. So we'll grab 4 fresh icon bold. We need 1 for the italic and 1 for strike through and 1 for underlined. There we go. And then we'll get those set up down here somewhere. Let's see, here should be fine. So icon bold, get resource, and that would be character bold. And the italic, and the strike through, character, strike through, and finally the underlined. Welcome to the stream, Mr. Zach. We are working on a Minecraft server launcher. Basically a kind of management application to run and host multiple Minecraft servers. Custom build up. Character underlined. There we go. And at the moment we are working on a basically a text color customization dialog. This one that lets us do cool things like this, for example. Let's say we want a yellow there, and we'll do this one as gray as well, and then this one as red, for example. We can do an underline if I can remember which one it is, that one, and then we'll do another yellow there. So this showcases what the text will look like in the game chat when this particular encoded text is sent to the server as a chat message, basically letting us completely customize the warning messages that this program can send to the Minecraft server before it's going to shut down the server for, say, a regular restart or daily maintenance, which would include doing a backup of the game world. And yes, that's also included in this application. So that's basically what's going on here. Okay, so we got the 4 icons, and then we need to set up some. Actually, we should probably put these as yeah, why don't we do these as custom types instead? Nah. Nah, we'll just do something similar to the other one. In this case, it would then be a format hitbox, rectangle, do a 0, and then we'll do, let's see, we doing those 22 by 22. So that leaves 6 pixels. So that's 3 on either side. Yeah, that should be enough. Okay. Yeah, we may need to do an initialize of these. Yeah, we'll do a build format hitboxes as well, and then let this one handle setting up the hitboxes for them and initializing the bitmaps needed. And we should probably put these up as yeah, we'll put those in an array as well, just to make it a little easier for us to draw them using a loop instead. So I'll put that here, and then yeah, we'll do a yeah, format icons, and then we'll get rid of these. Boom. Okay. There we go. We still need to get the images from the resources, so we'll need to re-reference these, but we can do that as well. These would be, or just to keep these in check, the width of these 22 pixels each. Basically these will do this quick. Basically I'm going to set them up so they look similar to these buttons here, including the hover effect. But instead of putting text in, we'll put the icons that we stuffed in the resource bag in here. So the bold, the italic, the strike through, and the underline icons. We'll put those in instead of the actual text. And then turn them into basically the same kind of hoverable, clickable, custom stuff on the UI. But we'll put them underneath the text box, so down here somewhere, and then we'll see if we can figure out a way to do a reset. Perhaps we should see if there's an icon available for that. Let's see, word processing set, yeah. I do believe it was here that I found them. Yep. Okay, let's see if one of these can be useful. Actually, let's go up here and do a slightly bigger so we can actually see what this looks like. See if we can find something useful. These are all document icons. Pi would be neat if we had some kind of jumbled up with a trash can on, though that might be difficult to see as those tiny icons. Nah. Nothing really springs up. No reset. Nah, not really. Nah, we'll do a standard button for that. Okay. Right. Let's get back to the task at hand. There we go. All right. We know that we are going to need to set this one up, new rectangle, and we're going to need 4 of these, one for each of these. And we're going to need the same thing for the format icons, 4 of those. All right, then that takes care of setting those up. And then for the Y position, we'll simply just use the Y position of the buttons. And then use the same kind of spacing for the boxes in between as we did before. So we'll grab that one. And that should be it. And then we'll just start with the X position of, or the left position of the text box, so we can line them up with both the text box and the existing buttons. And then we'll set them up. All right, let's loop through these. And here we need to set up the hitboxes, of course. Equals new rectangle. And for this one, we need the text box left position plus, and this would then be the counter times the box width plus the box spacing, just like we did on the other one. Yeah, but it doesn't sound as well in English as it does in Danish. The Y position would be that of the existing button, so we'll use the accept button, and that will then be the top. And here we of course need the width of it and the height of it. There we go. And next up, we need to set up the format icon accordingly. So the first one will be bold. For this, we'll just use a switch. And then format icons F equals that one. And for the next one, we'll grab this one, which is the italic. This then yields us the same order of these buttons. There we go. And break. And finally, this one equals the last one, like so. And break that one. Alrighty, now we have those set up as arrays, so we can just loop through them when we need to draw them. Alright, so when we welcome to the stream, Ortunado. Do you know any other programming languages? Or scripting languages for that matter? This one we need to remember to call, because if we don't, they will not be built, and therefore they won't be available. Okay, if you know a little bit of JavaScript, then getting into C# should be relatively easy. They are quite similar in syntax. All right, so let's extend our rendering stuff, the custom renderings, UI rendering stuff, because now we also have these additional buttons, and we probably need to have a look at this one to figure out the colors that we need. Which would be for the disabled ones, they don't really matter. We do need the enabled one, and we need to work out exactly how these were set, but I do believe that we did something like change the alpha channel of these. Yes, we did. See, the enabled back color would be half intensity. Um, well, if you're familiar with creating Minecraft plugins, then you know Java. Java is also pretty much the same syntax. Any of the Java variants and the C variants are pretty much identical in syntax for the most part. The major differences between any of the Java languages and the .NET languages is, of course, the entire framework build-up and all of the event-based stuff that you have available in C#, which only exists to some extent in Java and isn't really all that available in JavaScript as such. But it's actually not all that difficult to go from the Java environment to C#. A rough guess would be that you can probably get the first Hello World application up and running within the first few minutes you try your luck with C#. It's not all that difficult if you know a little bit of Java or JavaScript already. The difficult part, of course, is learning all the different things that are available with the entire .NET framework. And that is a constant learning process. So you will never stop learning. I've been doing this for 30 plus years, and I'm still learning every single day. And I always run into something that, yeah, pretty much. In C Sharp, the same exact thing, excluding the script tags, of course, would be doing something along the lines of, let's see, go down here somewhere. This stuff we need, yeah, there's the test button. Okay, so hello world, basic C Sharp. When you're doing a WinForms project, you have an object called messagebox, which is the exact same thing as alert, and it has a show method where you go hello world, and that's it. It's a little bit different, but basically it's the same thing. For loops are the same, if statements are the same, the curly brackets are the same. Major difference between JavaScript and Java and or C# is, of course, variable types, which don't exist for the most part in scripting languages. And yes, this without the ending semicolon will work for VB.NET as well. Basically the same thing. So it's not all that difficult, especially if you know a little bit of the other stuff already. Okay, so we were doing the formatting buttons. There we go. So check if we have the hitboxes prepared. if the formatting hitboxes are initialized, then we can loop through and start drawing some stuff. So let's do those quick, just to set up the initial graphics for them. And when we get to the hover part of this particular setup, we'll do a slight change, because for these buttons we basically need to replace what's being rendered with a different setup, whereas in the color boxes we did an outside outline box to indicate the hover effect. Here we need to replace it, so when we do the hovering it'll be a little bit different. So these here we need to start by drawing a filled rectangle, and that would of course be the format hitbox rectangles, so we'll use that pretty much as is, but we need to construct a new brush for this using color from ARGB, because we saw in the flat button thingy that we set the background to about 50% on the alpha channel, and then we need to check the colors again. The enabled back color is 224, so we'll grab these and put them in here. There we go. That then constructs a new brush with a 50% alpha, and then we need to render it on the form itself. So that would be the current one, of course. There we go. And since it's already set, we don't really need to do anything further here. The one thing that we do need to do is redraw it, but this time do a solid one. So this would be a draw rectangle instead of a fill. And we'll grab this because it's basically the same thing, except we need a solid color. And this of course needs to be a pen. Note that pens, when you construct them, you can actually specify how wide that particular pen needs to be. The default size is 1 pixel. So if you don't specify anything, it'll just select a default of 1 pixel wide. There we go. Welcome to the stream, Tired Acrobat. I hope you're not too tired. We are working on a custom-built Minecraft server launcher application that is capable of handling multiple Minecraft servers, including service restarts and doing daily backups with customized warning messages and such. At the moment, I'm building a chat text customization dialog. This setup, which lets us customize whatever messages will go in the game chat for a specific server, or in the MOTD, for example. We can do stuff like this. Right now I'm building up these 4 gray squares down here as text formatting buttons, similar to how the color squares up here are working. So if I, for example, wanted to do this one in red, I can do that. I want yellow there, and then one of these will become underlined, so I can do something like this, for example. And then by means of this dialog, build and properly preview what a customized chat message will look like when it ends up in the game chat. The thing is that this particular setup, I've pre-configured 2 local Minecraft servers that I've got sitting on this computer. One is a vanilla setup, and one is a modded setup. And they are built to include remote console connections to the servers so that this application can send commands to the game server, for example, to post a chat message or do a proper stop, graceful shutdown of the server. It can properly monitor what's going on in the console of each individual server, as well as keep track of players joining and leaving. So even though we're currently not utilizing it, it is actually tracking players logging on and logging off the game server. So it does have some expandability in terms of features. Say, for example, if we wanted to do a quick chat console chat interface, then we could set it up as a broadcast message that we could do from this program onto either server or all of them at once. We could even do private messages to individual players on individual servers if we wanted to. We could add in stuff like kick ban, whitelisting, all sorts of stuff that we could put in as extra features on this application. At the moment, though, this is the part that we're working on, building up this custom rendering stuff for preview, so we can see what it will look like without actually having to start up the server and mess with both the game server and the game client to get these messages properly customized. What we already have is a full configuration interface for the most part. This is the base setup of the profile itself. And from here we can also get to a nice UI that basically messes with all of the different settings within the server properties file. It is a fully featured management tool. The schedule part of it lets us define service restarts and also a maintenance shutdown, which includes performing a backup of the game world and then restarting the server afterwards. So we can basically set this up as a fire and forget and let this one run the servers once all of it is configured. So that's basically it. The source code for the project is available on GitHub, and I do try to keep the source code pushed on the same day as I do the stream, unless I have to go through and find a weird bug or do some extra documentation that I haven't done on stream before I upload the code. But I very rarely ever change any of the code off stream. This is meant as a step-by-step go-through of what we're doing, what the thinking is behind, what's being designed and written, why I choose to do things the way I do, discussions with whoever's watching, and so on. I'm also open to feature suggestions. At the moment, there's no limit to how many profiles you can create on this. The basic limit is basically how many ports are available on a TCP connection, which is roughly 60,000 ports, which doesn't include the reserved ones. So, but that would probably be a pretty long list, so might not want to do that. Plus, you need a pretty beefy machine to run all those servers. In any case, if you guys don't mind, I kind of need a nature break, so I will be back shortly. I will try and make it as short as I can. Shouldn't be more than a couple of minutes, and then I'll be back.